everybody. It's Dr. Safiyya, and I wanted to take a moment because I noticed something happening in my practice and in the urgent care setting that I work part-time, that it is now the time of year when people with asthma need to start to take some precautions to avoid a serious flare-up that can ruin your family's holiday celebration and really put your health and life at risk. So I wanted to share some information with you. Don't have a lot of time. My daughter's getting out of school early, so we've got to make this snappy. I did want to take a moment to try to share this with the rest of Facebook. But I don't know if I'm tech savvy enough to do it. So let me see here how I can get this, share it out. Okay, can't figure it out. Well, we'll just have to share it later, but it's always helpful when you have questions as I'm speaking. I can go right ahead and address it. But when you have asthma, there are some people who might have intermittent symptoms or mild symptoms where they are fine most of the time. And then every now and then you might get a flare-up. You start having symptoms, or your child might start having wheezing, or many times it's not even wheezing. You start coughing more, or just having shortness of breath, or feeling like you don't have the energy to continue the same level of physical activity that you did before. And this can be one of the early warning signs that your asthma is starting to flare up. Anyone with asthma should definitely have a rescue inhaler on hand. And that pretty much is always a medicine called albuterol. There is another Xopenex or levoalbuterol inhaler, but for the most part, we're talking about albuterol as the rescue inhaler to try to get in your lungs and open up your airways. You can get this same medicine in the form of a nebulizer that you put into the machine to get it in your lungs easier, but that is a rescue medicine so that your lungs can be emergently opened up to get better oxygen delivery to your blood supply. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd much rather not need to be rescued. So from my position as a physician or healthcare provider, I'm always trying to avoid people having the need to use that rescue inhaler. So if you only need it, let's say twice a week, you find that you have symptoms that require you to use it, then that's fine. That's what we call mild intermittent asthma. But if you turn around and you're puffing on that thing every single day or multiple times a day, then that is not considered good control. And it's important to recognize that and recognize it early so that you don't land yourself in hospital. People still die from asthma. People still die from asthma. And we have too many different things that can be done to, for the most part, still watch people suffer and die because of this condition. Now, it's always important to talk about prevention. There are things that we can do to try to prevent asthma from flaring up, and sometimes even prevent asthma, period. Avoiding triggers is an obvious thing that we can do. Some common things that flare up asthma: cigarette smoke, smoking yourself. I have so many patients with asthma that smoke, which is just very confusing to me. But even being around cigarette smoke can cause people's asthma to flare. It can make your child's asthma worse because you smoke, even though they don't. Certain pets, if you know you're allergic to certain pets and you have them in your home, that can be a trigger for asthma. I, for instance, am extremely allergic to cats. And I don't have asthma, but I feel like I might have a touch of it if I'm around a certain amount of cat dander. You might think of allergies being a seasonal thing for the spring or the fall. But if you're allergic to things that are indoors, then you might have symptoms from this all year round. In fact, it might be even worse in the wintertime if you're allergic to dust mites, for instance, or mold, some indoor molds. That can be really bothersome. And people with indoor allergies tend to have more chronic or severe symptoms because they're exposed to it all year round. So their lungs, their nasal passages, all of it is inflamed all year round. And sometimes if you have nasal allergies and asthma, getting flared up in your nose can trigger your whole respiratory system to start to act up. There's also certain foods, and this is something else to be concerned about because Thanksgiving is tomorrow and a lot of people are going to be overdoing it. But excess amounts of sugar, especially when ingested chronically, can increase the inflammatory state in our bodies and make asthma worse. We do know that obesity makes asthma worse. And but then there are certain foods that can also aggravate it, like sulfites, which is a common preservative in many foods. It is something that is found in significant quantities in red wine, which a lot of people are going to be, drinking up a lot, but also certain preservatives in food as well. So you want to try to start to avoid food that has artificial preservatives or sometimes even natural preservatives in it, and try to look and see if you can spot sulfites in the label and avoid those things. If you can't avoid triggers, for instance, colds are often a trigger for asthma. You can't always avoid a cold, although you can wash your hands, trying not to be in close contact with people who have a cold. There are things you can do to try to avoid it. But if you know colds trigger your asthma and you start having cold symptoms, then I suggest that you have a plan in place. You want to have what's called an asthma action plan. And I put a link to some information that you could use for yourself and also to work with your doctor to get an asthma action plan in place. There are certain medicines that I suggest you have on hand. Of course, we always want to avoid medicines when we can, but you can die from asthma. If you can't breathe, you know how they talk about the ABCs, airway, breathing, circulation. If you don't have A and B down, then, you might not be long for this world if you have asthma and you start flaring up. So it's important to have some things on hand, even thinking about an emergency situation. If you have asthma, you need to make sure you always have an albuterol inhaler. I would recommend that you have a prescription for a controller inhaler. You don't always need it, but for instance, if colds trigger your asthma, then you want to start that Flovent or whatever other controller inhaler when you start having those symptoms so that you could keep yourself out the hospital. You probably should have on hand a prescription for prednisone, the 5-day burst therapy. Even if you need to call your doctor, I'll tell people, my patients who I know are pretty tenuous, to have a prescription on hand. If you start flaring up real bad, go ahead and start it. But I want to see you in the office as soon as possible. If you find that your symptoms are getting bad enough that you need to start the prednisone, I do need to see you right away. So those are some things that I suggest people think about: avoiding asthma triggers, making sure you have the asthma medications on hand that you need in case of an asthma flare up, and knowing what to do if your home treatment isn't working. If your home regimen isn't working, you're using the albuterol inhaler or albuterol nebulizer, you're using the controller inhaler, the steroid inhaler generally is what we're speaking about. Most common one is Flovent. If you are bad enough that you need to start the steroid medicine, it's good to go ahead and start it. Even if you're on your way to the emergency room, it's good to go ahead and take that if you have it, because the sooner we can try to get on top of that inflammation, sometimes it can prevent a real serious situation, including needing to be intubated, where they have to stick a tube down your throat. So we want to avoid all of those things. That's going to ruin everybody's celebration if things get that far out. So it's better to plan. They say proper planning prevents poor performance. Well, that applies in this situation as well. So get an asthma action plan. If you start to flare up, you want to get medical attention right away. If your home action plan isn't working, that's a time to seek emergent medical attention, urgent care, ER, whatever you need to do it if you're trying to manage it at home and it's not working, because people still do die from asthma, and we can effectively treat this condition in most people. Keep in mind that the Road Docs, that is the telemedicine group that I'm now participating with. They're available. If you can't get in to see your doctor, or they're not available, you can reach out to one of us. We are located in many different states. Some of us are licensed in multiple states. I'm not. I'm licensed in Pennsylvania. Then you can reach out and get some medical advice so that we can try to come up with a plan to keep you safe, keep your family members safe. So again, this is Dr. Safiyya Shabazz. I forgot to ask you to share this video, but please do share it if you found it helpful, and make sure that you have your asthma action plan in place for yourself or your child, if it's your child with asthma, so that everybody can have an enjoyable time with their families without having the unfortunate event of a medical emergency. All right, so hopefully everyone has a great celebration with their family. Not everyone celebrates Thanksgiving, but even if you don't, it does tend to be a time that we're spending with our families, and most people have a day or a couple days off from work, and that's always a blessing. So thank you very much. Like the video, share it, and talk to your doctor. All righty, peace.